I think music is the most powerful universal language in the world.
Music was a lifeline.
It became part of the fabric of who I was.
It pushed me to do some courageous things.
It touches the soul like somebody talking to you can't. And you can do all of that in 3.5 minutes.
I kind of had no idea the beginnings that music had. I mean, I'm very familiar with contemporary Christian music, but it was exciting to see kind of this movement. Talk to me about being a part of the documentary. And then was there a point in your career where you felt like it was changing?
First, I got approached by the Irwin brothers, John and Andy, who've got this great movie company. I can only imagine was really their biggest movie, and Lionsgate obviously being a part of that. But they approached me 2-3 years ago about telling this story, that's really never been told on the big screen. People have written books about it, with different genres, but the big picture and how the whole thing began, which was really the late 60s, honestly, civil unrest, Vietnam, drugs, hippies, the whole deal. It was crazy. It was a crazy time. And all of a sudden, all the heroes started dying. Jim Morrison was dead, and Janis Joplin and Hendrix, and everybody kind of hit rock bottom. And these hippies found out about this hippie preacher at Calvary Chapel, and people started getting saved. And they didn't want to change what they were doing. A lot of those guys were musicians, so they just changed their lyrics. And within a span of 6 months, there were 12 bands.
Wow.
And one of those records found its way in a record bin in my hometown of Canova, West Virginia. And I found it, and it changed my life.
I had no idea the impact of Billy Graham's blessing, so to speak, on the music. And you had
Yes.
a special relationship with him. I mean, you got to share the stage with him and lasted all the way through performing at his funeral.
Well, I love Billy. I mean, I miss him terribly. It's a lot of days I get teared up, and what a great man. He had a huge impact on my life. For him to put a stamp of approval on what we do, he thought it was valid. I'll never forget that time. We talk about it in the film, which was a powerful moment in 1994, where he knew that there was no way we're going to reach this next generation of young people unless we change the programming. And so on a Saturday night, on a weekend in Cleveland, Ohio, he decided to do youth night. We're going to have a rock concert, which was met with a lot of opposition in his camp. But he was determined that was the right move. So it was myself and DC Talk. And that night was life-changing for me. I heard Billy probably give his best message I've ever heard him give. And that was the beginning of many, many youth nights that we did on those Saturday nights all around the country. And that really solidified a real friendship with Billy and I. We had a lot in common. I've got 5 kids. He's got 5 kids. We travel. And then we just got to be really, really close. And then to have those beautiful times together, especially in the last 2-3 years of his life, and me visiting him in his log cabin in Montreat, North Carolina, was some sweet times I'll never forget for the rest of my life.
One of the things I think that it resonates with a lot of people is this idea of like maybe hearing the Lord's voice or a nudging of something that you think that you should do, but you're not sure that it aligns with what you want to do. So I found it fascinating when you were talking about the development of your worship album and the release date of the poignant September 11th, 2001. Will you just share a little bit about that story?
I've been a worship leader for 19 years before I ever did that record, and I was still doing pop music and all that. But yeah, we had this worship service at the Ryman Auditorium with a bunch of it was Gospel Music Week. People come all from all around the world for this week, and something happened that night, and I kept getting woken up in the middle of the night, hearing this voice going, "For such a time as this," and I just sort of resisted. I just didn't. I'm going, I don't want to do that. I'm writing these pop songs, but it took the third time. It was a pretty loud voice. And I found myself taking all these artists to Lakeland, Florida, and I did this record called Worship. And it was just slated. The release date was September 11, 2001. And for some reason, the timing of that record, it was a healing record, I think, for our nation. And it not only found its way all around America, but just literally all around the world. It's the biggest record of my career. And So yeah, that was wild. And then, and then we just redid that record actually just a few months ago, and we just actually reimagined that record with a full symphony orchestra. So that moment entered the top 5 for me, and glad I did it. So yeah, and if that record spurred any of the worship movement, if I had anything to do with that, I hold that really lightly. I mean, a lot of people say that's the case, but it doesn't matter if I did or not. It was the right thing to do. And I knew it deep down inside. When I found myself down there doing that record and what happened that night, I'm going, oh my gosh, this was the right thing to do.
You've had the most amazing career, from, Grammys to dozens of albums, tons of #1 songs. We have your children's book, which I love. Acting.
You.
So talk to me about how do you feel that you're able to blend your creative giftings with your faith? I mean, it's such a fantastic thing that all of us hopefully could emulate in the marketplace, regardless of if our sector happens to be part of a Christian industry.
I just trust my gut. I just trust my instincts. I've got a good team around me. I've got a good team at my office. I've got a pastor I've been walking with for 39 years. My wife and I have this prayer group that we've had together for 30 years, so you just kind of walk with this tribe. You have to be careful who you walk life with, and if you surround yourself with not so good people, you're going to get in trouble, and so, yeah. And I mentioned in another interview, I surround myself with a bunch of young people too, when it comes to the creative thing. I want to try to I never want to be one of those people that just is going to retire and find some place that I'm going to play in a theater for the rest of my life. That's not what I'm called to do. So the whole acting thing and scoring movies, I don't know how I juggle it, honestly, but I think I still pace myself. I think people think I work all the time, and that's not really the case. I'm a big family guy, and I love my family. And so that's the #1 priority. But all these things keep coming at me, and they all seem to find a place in my schedule going, I think I'd like to do that. Yeah, I think I'd like to do that. I just got back from Italy doing an Andrea Bocelli special, which was great. But this movie, though, was a real passion of mine, because I knew that John and Andy Irwin had the goods to pull it off, because they're great storytellers. And to take over 300 hours of interviews and turn that into an hour and 45-minute documentary is difficult. And they pulled it off, and it's really amazing.